The morning air bit through everything. Daniel stood at the bus stop on 5th Avenue, checking his phone for the third time in 2 minutes. 6:45. If the bus came on time, he'd make it to work by 7:30. If it didn't, well, he'd heard that story before from his manager. He pulled his old brown coat tighter around himself. The thing had seen better days. His dad had given it to him years ago, back when Daniel still thought life would turn out differently. Back when he thought he'd be the kind of guy who drove to work instead of taking the bus. But life had other plans. Now it was just him and his daughter Katie, and honestly, that was enough. His phone buzzed. A text from the morning care center. Katie arrived safe. She's playing with the building blocks. Have a good day, Daniel smiled. At least something was going right. Getting Katie to care by 6:30 in the morning wasn't easy. But the early shift at the tech company paid a bit more, and every dollar mattered. The wind picked up again, and Daniel noticed he wasn't alone at the stop anymore. On the far end of the bench sat a woman. At first he thought she was just waiting for the bus like everyone else. But something was off. She wasn't dressed for the weather. Not even close. She wore what looked like it used to be a nice business suit. Gray pants and a matching jacket, the kind you see in office buildings downtown. But the jacket was thin, meant for air-conditioned rooms, not November mornings. And it was dirty, stained with something dark on one sleeve. Her hair hung in messy strands around her face, and she had no bag, no purse, nothing except a small plastic grocery bag clutched in her hands. She was shaking. Not the normal cold shiver everyone does while waiting for the bus. This was different. Her whole body trembled like she couldn't control it, and her lips had this bluish color that made Daniel's stomach turn. He'd seen that color before years ago, when his neighbor's kid had fallen through ice at the pond. Hypothermia, the doctors had called it. Daniel looked around. A few other people waited further down the street, all of them staring at their phones or deliberately looking anywhere except at the woman on the bench. He got it, people had their own problems. Everyone was just trying to get through their day. But still, the woman's eyes were closed now, her breathing shallow and fast. Daniel took a step closer, then another. He could leave this alone. He could wait for his bus, go to work, pick up Katie, and forget he ever saw this. Nobody would blame him. He had his own kid to worry about. But then he thought about Katie. What if someday, years from now, she needed help and everyone just walked past her? What if she was cold and scared and alone and 40 people saw her and did nothing? Daniel didn't let himself think anymore. He walked over to the bench and took off his coat. The cold hit him immediately, like jumping into ice water. His thin work shirt did almost nothing against the wind. "Hey," he said softly. The woman's eyes opened. They were strange eyes, sharp and aware despite everything else. Like even though her body was shutting down, her mind was still working. "You need this more than I do." He draped the coat over her shoulders. She tried to pull away, her hands coming up like she wanted to refuse. "I can't," she started to say, but her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely get the words out. "It's okay," Daniel said. "Really, I've got another one at work." This was absolutely not true. He had a thin hoodie in his locker that he used when the office got cold. But she didn't need to know that. The woman pulled the coat tighter around herself, and Daniel saw something in her face change. Relief, maybe, or gratitude, or just the simple human response to warmth after being so cold. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was rough, like she hadn't used it in a while. Daniel heard his bus approaching in the distance. "You gonna be all right?" he asked. She nodded, though he wasn't sure he believed her. But what else could he do? He couldn't miss work. He'd already used his last personal day when Katie had the flu. Missing a shift meant missing money, and missing money meant Katie didn't get the winter boots she needed. "There's a shelter on Morrison Street," Daniel said quickly as the bus pulled up. 3 blocks that way. They open at 8. "They'll help you." The woman looked at him with those sharp eyes, and for a second Daniel had the weird feeling that she was memorizing his face, like she was filing away every detail for later. "What's your name?" she asked suddenly. The bus doors opened with a hiss. Daniel stepped toward them, then looked back. "Daniel. Daniel Foster." "Thank you, Daniel Foster," the woman said. Something about the way she said it made it sound formal, important, like she was making a promise. Daniel climbed onto the bus and swiped his card. As he walked down the aisle, he looked out the window. The woman was still sitting there, wrapped in his dad's coat, watching the bus pull away. Then she was gone, swallowed by the morning traffic. He found a seat near the back and immediately regretted giving away the coat. The bus was cold. Everything was cold. He'd be freezing by the time he got to work, and then he'd have to sit in his cubicle in just his shirt for 8 hours. Maybe he could borrow something from Lost and Found. Stupid, he muttered to himself. But he didn't really mean it. He thought about Katie again, about the kind of world he wanted her to grow up in. If she saw someone who needed help, he'd want her to help them. Even if it cost her something. Maybe especially if it cost her something. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a reminder about his performance review next week. Daniel sighed. 4 years at Horizon Tech and he was still in the same position he started in. Every time a promotion opened up, they gave it to someone else. Someone who could stay late for meetings. Someone who didn't have to rush out at 5:15 to pick up their kid. He tried not to be bitter about it. He really did. But it was hard sometimes watching people who'd been there half as long climb past him, just because they didn't have anyone waiting for them at home. The bus rolled through downtown, past the tall buildings where the important people worked, the people who made decisions and changed things. Daniel wondered sometimes what it would be like to be one of them, to have the kind of job where people listened when you talked, where you could actually make a difference instead of just fixing computers all day. But that wasn't his life. His life was this bus and his cubicle and picking up Katie and doing it all again tomorrow. And that was okay. It had to be okay. As the bus pulled up to his stop, Daniel stood and headed for the door. The cold air hit him again as he stepped outside and he shivered. It was going to be a long day, but at least somewhere out there, some woman he'd never see again was a little bit warmer, and maybe that mattered. Maybe small things like that were the only things that really mattered in the end. Daniel walked toward the Horizon Tech building, just another employee in a river of people starting their day. He had no idea that in 72 hours everything in his life would change. He had no idea that the woman on the bench, the one wrapped in his father's coat, would walk through the front doors of his building as the most powerful person in the company. All he knew was that he'd done the right thing, and for now, on a cold November morning, that was enough. 3 days had passed since Daniel gave away his coat, and he'd nearly frozen to death every single day. The thin hoodie from his locker wasn't cutting it, and he'd had to walk to work twice when he missed the bus. But every time he thought about buying a new coat, he remembered Katie needed new shoes. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Now he sat at his desk in the IT department staring at lines of code that all blurred together. Server maintenance, again. It was the same thing every day. Fix this, update that, restart something else. Nobody said thank you. Nobody even noticed unless something went wrong. Did you hear? Linda from accounting leaned over his cubicle wall. She always knew the office gossip before anyone else. Today's the big day. New CEO is finally showing up. Daniel barely looked up from his screen. They say she's some big shot from Preston Industries. Came here to save us from going under. Linda lowered her voice. Jerry in sales heard she's already planning layoffs. That got Daniel's attention. Layoffs? Who knows? But that's what new CEOs do, right? Come in, clean house, cut costs? Linda shrugged. Just thought you should know. Maybe update your resume. She wandered off, leaving Daniel with a knot in his stomach. He couldn't lose this job. Even with the terrible pay and the passed-over promotions, it was steady. It had health insurance. It let him take care of Katie. He pulled up his resume file just in case, but his heart wasn't in it. The intercom crackled to life. Attention all staff. Mandatory all-hands meeting in the main conference room in 5 minutes. All staff main conference room 5 minutes. Daniel sighed and saved his work. Mandatory meant mandatory, even if he had a pile of support tickets waiting. He joined the stream of employees heading toward the big conference room on the 3rd floor. People muttered to each other, nervous energy filling the hallways. The conference room was already packed when Daniel arrived. He squeezed in near the back, finding a spot by the wall where he could see the stage but hopefully slip out quick if he needed to. He checked his phone. 4:32. Katie's care closed at 6. He had time, but not much. The VP of Operations walked onto the stage, a fake smile plastered on his face. Daniel had never liked him. The guy had rejected Daniel's promotion request twice, always with some excuse about dedication and commitment to the company mission. As if working your tail off for 4 years wasn't dedicated enough. Good afternoon, everyone, the VP said. his voice too loud through the speakers. "I know there's been a lot of uncertainty these past few months, but I'm pleased to announce that uncertainty ends today. We've brought in someone with an incredible track record, someone who's turned around 3 struggling companies in the last decade. Please welcome our new CEO, Victoria Hayes." The room erupted in polite applause. Daniel clapped too, his mind already drifting back to the work waiting on his desk. He'd meet the new boss, hear some speech about innovation and teamwork and excellence, and then get back to... He stopped breathing. The woman walking onto the stage was her. The woman from the bus stop. But she looked completely different. Her hair was perfect, styled in a way that probably cost more than Daniel made in a week. She wore a sharp gray suit, expensive and tailored. She moved with confidence, with power, like someone who owned every room she entered. But it was her. Those eyes, those same sharp, intelligent eyes that had looked at him through the cold that morning. There was no mistake. Daniel felt his face go hot. What was happening? Had that whole thing been a setup? Was she testing people? He'd heard stories about executives going undercover to see how employees really acted, but that seemed crazy. She'd been actually cold, actually in danger. That wasn't acting. Victoria Hayes reached the microphone and looked out over the crowd. Her gaze swept across the room, professional and assessing. Then her eyes landed on Daniel. For just a second, less than a heartbeat, something flickered across her face. Recognition, and something else. Surprise, relief? Daniel couldn't tell. Then it was gone, replaced by the smooth mask of a CEO addressing her employees. "Thank you," she said, her voice clear and strong. Nothing like the rough whisper from the bus stop. "I won't waste your time with empty promises. Horizon Tech is in trouble. We all know it. Revenue is down 40% from 3 years ago. We're losing clients to competitors, and morale is at an all-time low." People shifted uncomfortably. At least she was being honest. "But I didn't come here to oversee a sinking ship," Victoria continued. "I came here because I believe this company has potential. I've spent the last week reviewing every department, every process, every decision that's been made in the last 3 years, and I found something interesting." She clicked a remote and a slide appeared on the screen behind her. "The problem isn't the product. Your technology is solid. The problem isn't the market. There's plenty of demand. The problem is right here in this building. It's in how we treat people." Daniel leaned forward despite himself. This wasn't the usual corporate speech. "I've seen good employees passed over for promotions because they won't work 60-hour weeks," Victoria said, and Daniel felt like she was looking right at him. "I've seen talented people stuck in dead-end positions because they have families to take care of. I've seen a culture that rewards face time over results and politics over performance." The VP of Operations looked uncomfortable on the side of the stage. "That ends today," Victoria said firmly. "Starting next week, we're implementing flexible work hours. We're creating an on-site childcare facility, and we're conducting a complete review of our management structure. If you're a manager who's been holding good people back, consider this your warning." The room buzzed with whispered conversations. Daniel stood frozen, trying to process what he was hearing. "I believe in actions, not words," Victoria continued. "So let me start with an action. Effective immediately, I'm promoting Daniel Foster to Senior IT Systems Manager." Time stopped. Daniel heard his name but couldn't make sense of it. People turned to look at him. Someone near him whispered, "Who's Daniel Foster?" "Mr. Foster," Victoria said, and now she was definitely looking right at him. "Please see me in my office after this meeting." The rest of the presentation passed in a blur. Victoria talked about quarterly goals and restructuring plans and new client acquisitions, but Daniel didn't hear any of it. His heart hammered in his chest. Promoted? Why? He'd never even spoken to her except for that one moment at the bus stop. Unless that was exactly why. When the meeting finally ended, Daniel tried to slip out with the crowd, but Linda grabbed his arm. "Daniel Foster? You're Daniel Foster? You got promoted and you didn't even tell me." "I didn't know," Daniel said honestly. "I had no idea." "Well, go." Linda pushed him toward the door. "You can't keep the CEO waiting. And hey, when you're making the big money, remember us little people." Daniel walked to the elevator like a man heading to his own execution. His hands were shaking. This didn't make sense. You didn't get promoted to senior manager just for giving someone your coat. There had to be more to it. Maybe she'd looked into his work record. Maybe this was about something else entirely. The executive floor was nothing like the rest of the building. Thick carpet, real art on the walls, glass offices instead of cubicles. Daniel had only been up here once 4 years ago for his initial interview. He'd never expected to come back. Victoria's assistant, a young guy in an expensive suit, looked up from his desk. "Mr. Foster?" "Yeah," Daniel managed. "She's expecting you." "Go right in." Daniel's hand touched the door handle. Through the glass wall, he could see Victoria sitting at her desk, reading something on her computer. She looked up, saw him, and gestured for him to enter. This was it. Whatever was about to happen, whatever this all meant, he was about to find out. Daniel took a breath, thought about Katie waiting at care, about the coat he'd given away without thinking, about how sometimes the smallest choices led to the biggest moments. He opened the door and stepped inside. Daniel stood in the doorway of the CEO's office, feeling like his legs might give out. The room was huge, with windows overlooking the entire city. Victoria sat behind a massive desk, and for a moment she just looked at him. Really looked at him, like she was trying to figure out if he was the same person from the bus stop. "Please, sit down," she said, her voice softer than it had been during the presentation. Daniel walked to the leather chair across from her desk and sat on the very edge of it. His work shirt felt suddenly too thin, too cheap in this expensive room. "Ms. Hayes, I don't understand what's happening." "You saved my life," Victoria said simply. She stood up and walked to the window, her back to him. 3 days ago, at that bus stop. "I just gave you a coat," Daniel said. "Anyone would have—" "No." She turned around sharply. "That's where you're wrong. Do you know how many people walked past me that morning?" I counted. 47 people. 47 people saw me sitting there, freezing to death, and every single one of them looked away. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. Victoria walked back to her desk, but didn't sit down. Instead, she leaned against it, her arms crossed. "I had just flown in from Seattle. I was supposed to start this job the next day, but my luggage got lost at the airport. While I was filing a complaint, someone grabbed my purse right out of my hand and ran. Everything was in there. My phone, my wallet, my credit cards, my hotel reservation printout, everything." "I don't understand," Daniel said. "Why didn't you just call someone?" "The police, or—" I tried. "But without my phone and without ID and looking like I did." She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "The airport security thought I was lying. They thought I was some homeless person trying to scam them. By the time I convinced them to let me use their phone, the banks were closed. My assistant couldn't wire me money until morning. The police told me to go to a shelter." Daniel thought about that morning, about how close he'd come to just walking past her like everyone else. "I ended up at that bus stop because I was trying to walk to my hotel. I thought maybe if I explained to them face to face, they'd let me have a room. But it was 12 blocks away, and I was so cold I couldn't feel my feet anymore. I sat down on that bench thinking maybe I'd just rest for a minute. That's when you showed up." "The coat," Daniel said quietly. "You could have died. The doctors told me later that I was maybe 30 minutes away from serious hypothermia." Victoria moved back to her chair and finally sat down. "Another hour and I might not have made it at all." The room fell silent. Daniel could hear the city outside, cars honking, people living their lives. None of them knowing that 3 days ago, one small choice had changed everything. "But that's not why I promoted you," Victoria said, and Daniel's head snapped up. "I mean, it is, but it isn't. Does that make sense?" "Not really, no." Victoria pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. "After I got to my hotel, after I got warm and got my accounts sorted, I couldn't stop thinking about you. About what you did. So I asked around at the bus stop the next morning. Found a coffee shop owner who knows all the regulars. He told me your name, where you worked. Imagine my surprise when I realized you worked here." Daniel's stomach twisted. "You investigated me?" "I looked into you," Victoria corrected. "There's a difference. And do you know what I found?" She opened the folder. 4 years with this company. Excellent performance reviews every single year. You've solved problems that managers couldn't figure out. You've trained new employees on your own time. You've saved this company thousands of dollars by finding more efficient systems." She pulled out another paper. "But here's what else I found. 3 applications for promotion. 3 rejections. And do you know what the reasons were?" She read from the paper. Quote, "Doesn't show enough commitment to the company. Leaves exactly at 5:15 every day. Not willing to make sacrifices for the team." Daniel felt his face get hot. "I have a daughter. I have to pick her up from care. I can't just stay late whenever. I know, Victoria interrupted. I read all of it. I read the notes about how you had to leave early when your daughter was sick, how you can't do the Thursday networking events because you don't have childcare, how you turned down a project that required weekend work because you're a single parent. She closed the folder and looked at him directly. And you know what I saw? I saw someone who has his priorities straight. Someone who knows that family comes before a company that wouldn't even promote him. Someone who would literally give the coat off his back to a stranger and lie about having another one just so she wouldn't feel bad. How did you know I lied about that? Daniel asked. A small smile crossed Victoria's face. Because I called that coffee shop owner again. Asked him about you. He told me that coat was your dad's. That you wore it every day, rain or shine. That it was probably the only winter coat you owned. Daniel looked down at his hands. Katie needed winter boots. A coat just seemed less important. That's exactly what I mean, Victoria said, leaning forward. You made a choice. And it wasn't the easy choice. But it was the right one. Just like you've been making right choices at this company for 4 years, even when nobody noticed. So the promotion, Daniel started, is because you're good at your job, Victoria finished. The best in your department according to every metric I can find. The coat thing. That just made me actually look at your file. Made me question why someone that good was still stuck in a basic position after 4 years. She pulled out another paper, this one with numbers on it. Your new salary is double what you're making now. You'll have a team of 5 people under you. You'll report directly to me instead of going through 3 layers of management who don't appreciate you. And you'll have flexible hours, which means if Katie gets sick, you can work from home. If you need to leave early, you leave early. I care about results, not FaceTime. Daniel stared at the number on the paper. Double. That was new shoes for Katie and a winter coat for him, and maybe even enough left over to start a college fund. That was security. That was everything he'd been working toward. Why are you doing this? He asked. Really? Victoria was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was different. Softer, more human. 5 years ago, I lost my son. He was 8. Cancer. During those last 6 months, I barely worked. I took every day off I could. I left meetings early. I canceled trips. And my company at the time, they were understanding to my face. But I saw the emails. I heard the whispers. I wasn't committed enough. I wasn't dedicated. I'm sorry, Daniel said, and meant it. After he died, I threw myself into work, became the person who stayed late, who worked weekends, who put the company first. And I was miserable. Successful, but miserable. She looked at him. That morning at the bus stop, freezing and alone, I realized I'd become the kind of person who might have walked past me. Who might have been too busy, too focused on getting to work to stop and help. But you didn't become that person, Daniel said. You're changing things here. I'm trying to. Victoria stood up. And I need people like you to help me. People who understand that we're all human, that sometimes life matters more than a meeting. That kindness isn't weakness. She held out her hand. So what do you say, Daniel? Will you take the position? Daniel stood up and shook her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. Yes, thank you. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Victoria said. Because if you were the kind of person who let people down, you would have walked past me that morning. Daniel left the office 10 minutes later with a new title, a new salary, and a head full of thoughts he couldn't quite sort through. As he rode the elevator down to his floor, he thought about his dad's coat, about Katie, about how sometimes the smallest kindnesses turned into the biggest changes. He checked his phone. 5:15. Time to get Katie. But this time when he told his team he was leaving, it would be as their new manager. Everything had changed. And it had all started with one simple choice on a cold morning at a bus stop. 2 months passed like a dream Daniel kept waiting to wake up from. His new office had actual walls instead of cubicle dividers. His paycheck made him do a double take every time he saw it. And for the first time in 4 years, he didn't feel like he was drowning just trying to keep his head above water. Katie noticed the difference too. Daddy, can we get the name brand cereal this time? She asked during their Saturday grocery trip. Please? Daniel smiled and put 2 boxes in the cart. The old Daniel would have said no, would have explained why the store brand was just as good. But now he could say yes to cereal. He could say yes to the school field trip that cost $40. He could say yes to the warm winter coat hanging in Katie's closet with the tag still on it. Life was good. Better than good. So why did he feel so weird about it? He was putting groceries in the car when his phone rang. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. She'd given him her direct number his first week as manager, told him to call any time, but she'd never called him on a weekend before. Hello? Daniel, are you busy right now? Victoria's voice sounded different. Less CEO, more regular person. Just finishing grocery shopping. What's up? Is something wrong with the servers? Daniel had gotten used to weekend emergency calls, though they were less common now. No, nothing like that. Victoria paused. I was wondering if you and Katie would like to have dinner with me tonight. Nothing work-related. I just thought it might be nice. Daniel froze with a bag of groceries in his hand. Dinner? There's a family restaurant on Oak Street. Mario's, do you know it? They have a play area for kids. We could meet at 6 if you're free. If not, that's completely fine. I know it's last minute. No, I mean yes. We can do that. Daniel's brain scrambled to catch up. 6 o'clock. We'll be there. After he hung up, he stood in the parking lot for a full minute trying to figure out what had just happened. His boss wanted to have dinner with him and his 6-year-old daughter. His boss, who was also the CEO of the company. His boss, who he'd met by giving her his coat at a bus stop. Katie poked her head out the car window. Daddy, are you okay? Yeah, sweetie. I'm okay. How do you feel about going out to dinner tonight? Katie's eyes went wide. Really? Can I get spaghetti? You can get whatever you want. The restaurant was the kind of place that had crayons on every table and a giant play structure in the back that looked like a castle. Daniel spotted Victoria as soon as they walked in. She sat in a corner booth wearing jeans and a simple sweater. He'd never seen her in casual clothes before. She looked younger, more relaxed. Katie, this is Ms. Hayes, Daniel said as they approached the table. She's someone I work with. You can call me Victoria, she said, smiling at Katie. It's very nice to meet you. Katie, who was usually shy around new people, studied Victoria with serious eyes. Are you my dad's boss? I am, Victoria said. Is that okay? I guess so. He says you're nice. Are you nice? Katie, Daniel started, but Victoria laughed. It's a fair question. I try to be nice, but sometimes being a boss means making hard choices. Your dad is very good at his job, though. I'm lucky to work with him. Katie seemed satisfied with this answer and immediately spotted the play area. Daddy, can I go play? After we order, Daniel said. And after you eat something. They ordered their food, Katie chattering about school and her friend Amy, who had gotten in trouble for bringing her pet hamster to class. Victoria listened like she was genuinely interested, asking questions and laughing in all the right places. Daniel watched this interaction and felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't Boss Victoria. This was just Victoria, a woman having dinner with a friend and his kid. When Katie finally ran off to the play area, pizza sauce still on her chin, Victoria and Daniel sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Thank you for coming, Victoria said. I know this probably seemed weird. A little, Daniel admitted. But good weird, I think. Victoria played with her napkin, folding and unfolding it. I don't really have friends anymore. That sounds pathetic, doesn't it? A 42-year-old woman with no friends. It doesn't sound pathetic, Daniel said carefully. After my son died, everyone treated me differently. People didn't know what to say, so they said nothing. Or they said stupid things like, he's in a better place, or everything happens for a reason. Eventually, I stopped trying. Stopped calling people back. Stopped going to things. It was easier to just work. Daniel thought about his own life after Katie's mom left. How people had stopped inviting him places because he always had to bring a kid. How friendships had faded because he couldn't do spontaneous happy hours or weekend trips. I get it, he said. After I became a single dad, my whole social life disappeared. Everyone I knew was either married or out doing single people things. I didn't fit anywhere anymore. Exactly. Victoria looked relieved that he understood. And then you throw yourself into work because at least there, you know the rules. You know what's expected. But it's lonely. They watched Katie climb through the play structure, her laughter carrying across the restaurant. A little boy around her age joined her, and within seconds they were playing like they'd known each other forever. Kids had that ability, Daniel thought. They just connected without all the complicated adult stuff getting in the way. She's a lot like you, Victoria observed. Kind, open. She went right up to that boy and asked if he wanted to play. She's better than me, Daniel said. She doesn't overthink everything. Victoria smiled. My son was like that too. He could make friends anywhere. The grocery store, the doctor's office, didn't matter. He'd just start talking to people. Her voice got soft. His name was Ben. I don't talk about him much anymore, but I want to. Does that make sense? Yeah, Daniel said. It makes sense, and so Victoria talked. She told him about Ben's obsession with dinosaurs, about how he used to wear his Halloween costume for weeks after the holiday ended, about the last good day they had together at the beach. Daniel listened and shared his own stories about Katie learning to ride a bike, about the time she tried to give away all her toys to kids at the park, about the everyday moments that made being a parent worth it. The dinner lasted 3 hours. They ordered dessert even though they were full. They talked about things that had nothing to do with work. Books they'd read, places they wanted to travel, dreams they'd given up on and dreams they still held on to. When it was time to leave, Katie was half asleep on Daniel's shoulder. Victoria walked them to their car. Thank you, she said, for tonight, for letting me just be a person instead of a CEO. Thank you for dinner, Daniel replied, and for being honest. About Ben? About everything. Victoria looked like she wanted to say something else but wasn't sure how. Finally, she just smiled. Same time next week? Katie mentioned something about wanting to try the chocolate volcano dessert. She'd love that, Daniel said. And so would I. As he drove home, Katie mumbled sleepily from the back seat. I like Victoria, Daddy. She's sad sometimes, but she's nice. Yeah, baby. She is nice. Are you friends now? Daniel thought about that. Were they friends? It felt like more than just boss and employee. But calling it friendship seemed too simple for whatever was developing between them. I think maybe we are, he said. Good, Katie yawned. You need more friends. You're lonely too sometimes. Daniel looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror, this little person who saw more than he gave her credit for. You know what, Katie? You're absolutely right. That night, after putting Katie to bed, Daniel sat on his couch and realized something had changed. For 2 months, he'd been grateful for the promotion, for the money, for the opportunity, but he'd kept Victoria at arm's length, maintained the boss-employee boundary even when she'd been nothing but kind. Tonight, that wall had crumbled. And instead of feeling scared about it, he felt relieved, like maybe it was okay to let someone in again, like maybe being lonely didn't have to be permanent. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Thank you for tonight. I haven't laughed that much in years. Same time next Saturday? Daniel smiled and typed back. It's a date. Well, not a date. You know what I mean. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, I know what you mean. Sleep well, Daniel. He put his phone down and looked around his small apartment. Nothing had physically changed. But somehow everything felt different, lighter, like the future held possibilities he hadn't let himself imagine before. And it had all started with a coat at a bus stop. 6 months had changed everything and nothing at all. Daniel still took the bus to work most days, still picked up Katie at 6, still lived in the same small apartment. But now when he rode that bus, he thought about how one morning, one choice had led to all of this. It was a warm Saturday in May when Daniel found himself back at that same bus stop. Not because he needed the bus, but because Victoria had asked to meet him there. She'd been mysterious about it, just said it was important. Katie held his hand, swinging their arms back and forth. Is Victoria coming? She is, Daniel said. Should be here any minute. Over the past 6 months, their Saturday dinners had become routine. Sometimes it was just the 3 of them. Sometimes Victoria brought board games and they played until Katie fell asleep on the restaurant booth. Once they'd gone to the zoo and Victoria had laughed harder than Daniel had ever seen when a peacock stole Katie's pretzel. The line between boss and friend had blurred completely. At work, Victoria was still the CEO, still professional and focused. But outside those office walls, she was just Victoria, someone who called when she had a bad day, someone who remembered that Katie loved strawberry ice cream, someone who felt like family. There she is, Katie shouted, pointing down the street. Victoria walked toward them, carrying a large shopping bag. She wore a sundress, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, sunglasses perched on her head. She looked happy, really genuinely happy in a way she hadn't when Daniel first met her. Morning, she said, giving Katie a hug. Then more hesitantly, she hugged Daniel too. These small gestures of affection had become normal, but they still made Daniel's heart do a weird skip. So what's the big mystery? Daniel asked. Victoria set the shopping bag down on the bench. The same bench where she'd sat freezing 6 months ago. I wanted to come back here, to where it all started. She reached into the bag and pulled something out. Daniel's breath caught. It was his father's coat, but it looked brand new. The torn lining had been repaired. The buttons that had been hanging loose were now secure. Even the worn spots on the elbows had somehow been restored. I had it professionally restored, Victoria said quietly. It took months to find someone who could do it right, who could fix it without losing what made it special. Daniel took the coat, running his fingers over the fabric. It felt like his dad's coat, but better, like it had been given a second life. Victoria, you didn't have to. I wanted to, she interrupted. You gave me this when I needed it most. I've been holding on to it all this time, and I kept thinking I should return it. But it never felt like the right moment, until now. Katie tugged on Victoria's dress. Can I tell him? Victoria smiled. Go ahead. We're going on vacation, Katie announced, bouncing on her toes. All three of us. To the beach! Daniel looked between them, confused. What? I have a beach house, Victoria explained. I haven't been there since Ben died. I kept meaning to sell it, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Last week, Katie mentioned she'd never seen the ocean, and I thought... She paused, looking nervous. I thought maybe it was time to make new memories there. Good memories. If you want to, that is. 2 weeks next month. I cleared it with HR so you can take the time off. Daniel didn't know what to say. A beach house. 2 weeks. With Victoria and Katie. It sounded like something from someone else's life, not his. It's not weird, is it? Victoria asked quickly. I'm not being weird. I know we're friends, but I also know I'm your boss, and if this crosses some line... It's not weird, Daniel said. It's perfect, really. Thank you. They sat on the bench together, the three of them, watching the morning traffic go by. A businessman rushed past, coffee in hand, not even glancing at them. Then a young woman, earbuds in, staring at her phone. Life moved around them the way it always had. Everyone caught up in their own world. Do you think about it? Victoria asked. That morning? All the time, Daniel admitted. I think about what would have happened if I'd walked past you. If I'd been like everyone else. You wouldn't have, Victoria said with certainty. That's not who you are. An elderly man approached the bus stop, walking slowly with a cane. He wore a light jacket, but the morning air still had a chill to it. Daniel watched him sit on the far end of the bench, saw him shiver slightly. Without thinking, Daniel stood up and walked over. Excuse me, sir? Are you warm enough? The old man looked up, surprised. Oh, I'm fine, young man. Just waiting for the number 12. Here. Daniel took off his hoodie and offered it. Take this. It's going to warm up later, but right now it's still cold. The man's eyes watered. I couldn't, that's yours. I've got this. Daniel held up his father's coat. Just got it back, actually. Please, I'd feel better if you took it. The man accepted the hoodie with shaking hands. Thank you. You're a good person. As Daniel walked back to Victoria and Katie, he saw Victoria watching him with this look on her face. Pride, maybe, or understanding, or something deeper that neither of them had put words to yet. You just gave away another piece of clothing, she said, but she was smiling. Learned it from the best, Daniel replied, slipping on his father's coat. It fit perfectly. Like coming home. Katie pulled on both their hands. Can we get pancakes now? You promised pancakes. They walked to the diner 3 blocks away, the same one Daniel had walked past 1,000 times on his way to work. The same one where he'd sometimes stop for coffee when he had an extra $2 in his pocket. But now he walked through the door with Katie on one side and Victoria on the other, and the waitress smiled at them like they were a family. Maybe they were. Not in the traditional way, but in the way that mattered. They were 3 people who'd found each other when they all needed it most. Over pancakes. Victoria talked about the beach house, about the tidal pools where they could find starfish, about the tiny bookstore in town that Katie would love. Katie talked about building sandcastles and learning to swim. And Daniel just listened, feeling grateful for every strange twist that had led to this moment. I have something to tell you both, Victoria said as they finished eating. She looked nervous again. The board offered me a position at the corporate headquarters. In New York, it's a big promotion. Chief Operating Officer of the entire company. Daniel's stomach dropped. Oh, wow, that's amazing. I turned it down, Victoria continued, and Daniel's head snapped up. I told them I'm staying here, at Horizon Tech. With the people who matter. She looked at Daniel when she said it, and there was something in her eyes that made his heart race. Victoria, you can't turn down an opportunity like that because of what makes me happy. Victoria finished. That's exactly why I can turn it down. I spent years chasing the next big thing, the next promotion, the next achievement, and I was miserable now. Now I have Saturday dinners and zoo trips and a 6-year-old who asks me if dinosaurs could beat robots in a fight. I have a life again, Daniel. I'm not giving that up. Katie, oblivious to the weight of the moment, stuck her fork in the air. Dinosaurs would totally win. They all laughed and the tension broke. But as they left the diner and walked back toward the bus stop where Daniel's car was parked, Victoria grabbed Daniel's hand. Just for a moment. Just long enough for him to know that this thing between them, whatever it was real. Thank you, she said softly. For that morning, for every morning since. Thank you for seeing me, Daniel replied. For making me believe I was worth seeing. A bus pulled up to the stop and they watched it load passengers and drive away. 6 months ago, Daniel had gotten on a bus just like that one, freezing and worried about being late to work. He'd had no idea that giving away his coat would change his entire life. But that was the thing about kindness, he realized. You never knew where it would lead. You never knew who was watching, who needed it, whose life might shift because of one small choice. Katie tugged both their hands, pulling them toward the car. Come on, we need to go to the store and buy beach stuff. As they drove away from that bus stop, Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. A young woman helped an old man with his groceries, both of them smiling. A teenager held the door for a mother with a stroller. Small acts of kindness rippling out into the world. Maybe that's all any of us could do, Daniel thought. Show up, be kind, give what we can, even when it costs us something. Trust that somehow, in ways we might never see, it matters. He looked over at Victoria in the passenger seat, at Katie singing in the back, at the life he'd somehow stumbled into by doing nothing more than being decent on a cold morning. It mattered. All of it mattered, and it had all started with a coat.